There are plenty of things you just can't buy in a store. Sometimes you can get them from a flea market or yard sale, but you have to wonder about its history, who it belonged to before you, what it meant to them, and what they'd do to make sure no one else would ever have it. Do you have anything like this lying around your house? James Dean was an actor on the rise. In 1955, at only 24 years old, he was just about to have the world at his fingertips. He had purchased a brand new Porsche Spyder, decked out just how he wanted in order to make the car unique to him, and it was affectionately named Little Bastard. He showed off the car to many of his friends, one of them being actor Alec Guinness, who took one look at the car and told James that it looked sinister, and said to him that if he got in the car, he'd be dead in a week. That was on September 23rd, 1955. On September 30th, 7 days later, James Dean was dead. As James raced down the highway in the car he loved, he collided with another vehicle that had been turning left across the highway. His neck snapped and he sustained massive internal injuries, killing him almost instantly. Though his acting career was cut short, it was because of this crash that he became a true legend. George Barris, perhaps the most well-known car customizer in the world and the man who customized James Dean's car, bought the wreckage. When it arrived at his garage, it slipped right off the truck and crushed a mechanic's leg. But this was only the beginning. George Barris had sold parts of the car to two physicians who were looking to add a piece of the legendary vehicle into their own cars. In October of the following year, the two physicians proudly got into their cars to race one another. One of the vehicles spun out of control and hit a tree, killing the driver instantly, while the other locked up and rolled while going into a curve and nearly killed its driver. It seemed that Little Bastard was cursed, but to better solidify the idea, there's much more room for tragedy. Two of the Porsche's tires were unharmed in the accident and sold off, and they simultaneously blew out and landed their new driver right in a ditch. Even thieves who tried to take a part of the car as a souvenir were met with injuries. George Barris decided, in light of these events, that he would keep the wreck stored away from that point forward, but was convinced by the California Highway Patrol to loan out the vehicle for a traveling highway safety exhibit. This, of course, only led to a severe injury when the car had rolled off its pedestal and landed right on a student. And aside from the fact the garage it was being kept in burned to the ground, the car managed to claim other lives while it was being transported. One of the more mysterious events surrounding the car was when it was on display in New Orleans, and upon its pedestal broke into multiple pieces without any explanation as to how. The following year, the car was yet again being transported by truck to another exhibit, but when the truck reached its destination, it was discovered that the back was empty. Little Bastard had vanished and has not been seen since. Paintings, works of art to hang on the wall that add character to any room they're in. And they all tell a story, but some stories are a bit more heated than others. The Crying Boy was a painting by Bruno Amadeo, a painting so popular that it was mass-produced and sold at a relatively high demand. Bruno had painted many pictures of crying children, and as legend has it, painted portraits of orphans in Spain. That was, of course, until the orphanage burned down. The Crying Boy didn't receive any notoriety until one day when a Yorkshire firefighter contacted The Sun, a British newspaper, with an odd discovery. He claimed that an alarming number of homes that had contained the Crying Boy painting, or a variation of it, had burned down. However, this wasn't so odd considering the painting was so popular that it could be found in many different homes. However, there is a bit more to the story. The firefighter said that amidst the scorched ruins, many of the Crying Boy paintings were unharmed by the flames and still kept their integrity, even though the intensity of the heat was strong enough to reduce just about everything else in the home to ashes. The instances continued to occur, houses continued to burn, and the Sun was there to report it every step of the way. Some people even tried to test the curse by throwing the painting into a fire, only to find out it wouldn't burn. There are still many questions left unanswered, while many people refuse to hang a picture of a crying child in their home. But perhaps the most haunting question of all is, what is the child crying for? Is it for themselves, or is it for you? There are rarely things more comfortable than one's favorite chair. A familiar place to relax after a hard day's work, Thomas Busby was a drunk who knew these comforts very well, as he often enjoyed having a few drinks while sitting in his favorite chair. But Thomas was a hot-headed fool, and this would lead to his demise. He reportedly worked as a coiner making counterfeit coins, where he partnered up with a man named Daniel Audi. Thomas would soon fall in love with his partner's daughter, Elizabeth, and Daniel did not approve of this. One night upon returning home, Thomas found Daniel sitting in his favorite chair. They argued over Elizabeth and Daniel promptly left, threatening to take his daughter away from him. That very night, Thomas approached Daniel's home and violently murdered him in his sleep. He was eventually caught, tried, and convicted of the murder of his former partner. Sentenced to die, legend says that Thomas cursed his favorite chair on the way to the gallows, saying that anyone who sat in it would meet a swift death. Since that point, it is said that anyone who sits in Thomas's chair does in fact die soon after. The curse even inspired the name for the inn near where Thomas's body was displayed, called the Busby Stoop Inn, where the infamous chair was kept. Locals would often challenge each other to sit in the chair, but none of them would sit in it themselves. But everyone makes mistakes, especially in an establishment that serves alcohol. A chimney sweep who had taken the dreaded seat the night before was found the next morning dead, hanging by his neck from a gatepost just outside. Airmen would often partake in services of the inn, and some of them would unfortunately sit in that chair, and any of them that did would never return home from their missions. Even when it was purchased by a new owner in 1968 who held no belief in curses, the chair continued to live up to its legend. In fact, a number of fatal accidents associated with the chair made a believer out of the new owner, and led him to lock the chair up in the cellar, but it still wasn't safe. A delivery man from a local brewery had taken a seat in the chair while he was down in the cellar. On his way out, he told the new owner that the chair was far too comfortable to be left in the cellar and should be kept upstairs. After leaving, the delivery man's truck went off the road and he was killed. At this point, the new owner had donated the chair to a museum, which has kept it in its rightful place, nailed to a wall high enough where no one can sit in it, and there it will remain. No matter how much people may beg to have an opportunity to tempt the curse, the museum strictly states that the penalty for doing so is death. Online auctions are the perfect place to find pre-owned items for a great deal, but some things just are never worth it, no matter what the price may be. Kevin Mannis had visited an estate sale where he got his hands on a very peculiar box. The box had belonged to a Holocaust survivor, and Kevin was immediately intrigued. He purchased the box and brought it home, but it proved to be more than just any old antique. Upon opening the box, Kevin discovered that it reeked of cat urine, and the items inside made little sense to him. The contents included locks of hair bound with cord, a small statue, a dried rosebud, two 1920s pennies, a small golden goblet, and a single candle holder. All of these items were supposedly involved with exorcising demons. The truth of that old box was that its owner had apparently sealed a demon referred to a Dybbuk inside the box. She was allegedly attacked by the demon when she and some of her friends had conducted a seance, and Kevin had just opened it. He began having horrific nightmares involving an old decrepit hag. Anyone who happened to stay in the house with him had similar nightmares as well. Perhaps still a skeptic of the supernatural, Kevin decided to give the box to his mother for her birthday, and upon receiving it, she promptly had a stroke. Having had enough of the box, Kevin sealed it and put it up for auction with a warning. But for some, warnings only serve to make an item more tempting. The Dybbuk box had been purchased by Jason Haxton, director of the Museum of Osteopathic Medicine. It didn't take long before Jason was having issues of his own. His body broke out in hives and welts, and he began coughing up blood. He reported that even his wife had broken out in bloody, weeping sores when she had come into contact with clothing he had worn while he was trying to contain the demon back inside the box. After tormenting him and his family for long enough, he eventually consulted with a rabbi to seal the demon back in the box. Apparently, this was successful, and since then, Jason has hidden the box and refuses to tell anyone its whereabouts. Funny how much meaning someone can put into a simple object. But I suppose we all have things we'd never want to part with. Some things just aren't meant for anyone else. That's all for now. Remember, you may not believe it, but anything is possible in a world so seriously strange. I'm Rob Dyke, and I'll see you next Wednesday. Be sure to show the artist of this series some love by liking her fan page linked in the description below. Also, be sure to subscribe to my channel because you won't want to miss what's next.